Be ready to be engaged, be ready to answer some questions, and all right, let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Like Shaylin said, my name is Maura. I'm the program director for a program called Mentoring to Access Score. It's just an AmeriCorps program here at MNA as well. I think I've met a lot of you in the past, but if not, hello. So if you guys, I have a couple interactive slides for us today, so if you want to type your question into the questions box, or if you want to, or type your answer into the question box, or if you want to talk, just raise your hand and we can unmute you so that everyone can hear your comment. Just let us know, but we will get started. So a big topic in AmeriCorps is burnout. There's a point in everyone's service year where they start to get kind of down and not as motivated, and that's kind of something that we call burnout. So we're going to talk today about some of the signs, some of the causes, and some of the things you can do to mediate burnout throughout your year so that you're prepared if and when it does happen to you. So these are some things, some common traits of what burnout looks like. It's different for everybody. So, you know, you might be affected by one thing more than another. It just depends on you personally. So, but these are just common things. So take that into mind when you're looking at it. For burnout, it can be physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion. You can just feel really tired all the time. You can feel like you don't know what you're doing. You can be really stressed out emotionally. You can just be on that spectrum of being really sad or being really angry. Or just kind of being blank or feeling empty. Those are all kinds of signs of burnout. Believing that your work doesn't have any meaning or having low energy or interest in work. These are, you know, the days when you feel like you can't necessarily get out of bed. When you get to work and you just kind of sit there, you're not motivated to get anything done on your to-do list. That's a big sign of burnout. Feeling really negative, having kind of a cynical attitude, or just being really discontent with yourself or with others, just having different feelings, like you don't necessarily want to work with part of your team, or you're just, you know, feel like nothing that you're doing is important. I always kind of think of grumpy cat in this situation, like you just never want to participate, even if it seems like something that you would usually be interested in. That's a big sign. And then another thing that's important to stress when you're talking about burnout is that there is a difference between stress and burnout. So stress is usually more short-term and situational, and you know there's an end in sight. Whereas burnout isn't just, you know, project-based. It's kind of a chronic, ongoing thing. You can kind of get disillusioned with that, and it's easy just to get stuck in that kind of cycle and motion of being burned out. And often if you don't address the signs of stress that you're dealing with and you're just persistently in that thing, you can move from stress to burnout. So just some things to kind of think about. So if you're feeling any of those, hopefully you're not this far in your service year. But if you are, you might be starting to get burned out. Has anyone kind of experienced any of these things at your site so far or in different situations? If you want to comment, go ahead, but we'll get on to the next slide and we will shout those out as they come in. Megan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I was just raising my hand to say that I've been feeling burned out a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, it can happen at a lot of different times in the year, especially, you know, you're a second year VISTA, right?
Yeah, I'm
so
sad.
if you've been doing something for a long time and it kind of seems like it's, you know, not something new and exciting necessarily, and you're going through those paces, that's definitely a time that burnout can come.
Well, yeah, I guess for me, it's not like a lack of inspiration. It's more of just like I don't know. I'm a creative, so I'm just kind of in the lull right now.
Sure. That's definitely something that can kind of trigger burnout if you're not feeling necessarily as inspired as you were before. So that kind of leads perfectly into our next slide, which is talking about Oh, there we go. Some of the causes and stress, or the stress causes of burnout and stress. Like I said, with how burnout looks, causes of stress and burnout are going to be different for everyone as well. But these are just some of the common reasons that people kind of get into this rut. So a big one is personal boundaries. This can be work-life balance. I know that's something that we talk about a lot in self-care. Just being able to say yes or no to people. Maybe you feel like you're being taken advantage of. Those are all kind of personal boundary things that can lead to you just feeling not so great about what you're doing. Financial burdens is another huge one, especially for national service members. You guys are living on a very small stipend, and that can make life difficult if you're having to make those choices between whether you pay your rent or your water bill, or you buy, clothes or food. Those are very, very real things that can lead you to not feeling as inspired as you once did. Chronic personal struggles. This is another one that can fall into that if you're having family problems, if you're going through relationship changes, if you're having health problems. These are all different things that can really impact the way that you're feeling and kind of lead you into a cycle of things if you can't address them that are going to be negative for you. And then I think this is one of the main ones is changes, new beginnings, losses, and challenges. And figuring out how to deal with change. That's something that pretty much everyone is, change is inevitable. And how we deal with it is definitely something that can impact how passionate we feel about our projects and whether or not we're able to get through the tasks that we have to. These changes can be in anything. They can be in jobs, they can be in projects at your service sites, they can be changes with people, changes with your passions. If you thought you were really excited about one thing and then you realize that's maybe not what you want to do. And I also think that right now a big change that we're dealing with is learning how to adapt with our new political climate that we're going to be encountering, regardless of how you voted or how you're feeling about it. It is going to impact our sector pertaining to national service, and a lot of you are really compassionate people, and that is something that I think it's going to be important to be mindful about this year, even with all of the regulations around voting and politics that are intertwined with AmeriCorps. It is something that is going to affect the service that you're doing. So just to be mindful of that and how it's going to affect you, and how to keep going when you're feeling challenged or under-resourced. So kind of along that lines, are there any things that you guys can identify as your biggest stressors, or things that have caused burnout? I know you mentioned kind of feeling less creative, Megan. Is there anything else that you guys can think of that's not on this list? Feel free to chime in. We'll look for hands raised or for comments and questions. So. We have somebody here that says, no stress here, I love it up here. That's wonderful. Hold on to that. So somebody says that their site's lack of cohesion and organization. That's a big cause of stress. Yeah, if you're not sure where things are, or if you're all on the same page, that can definitely cause some challenges in your workplace. Or your service site, sorry. Well, if there's anything else you guys pop up that you want to address as stressors or causes of burnout, feel free to chime in at any time. But we will go on to, we have one more here. Definitely, so somebody's talking about their chronic personal struggle stressor, feeling like everything bad could happen. That's definitely something, and feeling like, kind of feeling like everything bad that could happen, or that constant negative space of thinking like this is going to go wrong, or this has gone wrong, and this has gone wrong, over and over again. That can definitely weigh down on you. I think that's something that we've all encountered at some point in our life, or definitely will. So thank you for sharing. So with all of that in mind, we're going to do a quick run through of the 4-step process to try to address how you can keep going, especially in pertaining to the service projects that you guys are doing at your sites right now. When you hit burnout, whether that's in your personal life or in your career. So I think this process is going to be really helpful so that you can get moving on tasks that you need to do and projects that you need to do. And I think it helps break that cycle too, because when you accomplish things, it helps motivate you if you can see that you're getting things done and making changes. So we will go to our first step of the project, or of the chain. I don't know what I'm saying. So the first step is to organize and work with the brain and mind. Oftentimes we get stressed out or we burn out just because there's too many things going on in your head or in your life. I know sometimes when I get to work and I have too many things to do, I just kind of shut down. I just stare at my computer and I get nothing done. And then I come in the next day and I'm even more stressed out or burned out because I didn't get anything done and my to-do lists are getting longer and longer. And it just kind of turns into this nasty cycle of unproductivity and just doubting myself and doubting my work. So something I think is really important to do is to make a list. And I know this doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but I think there's a lot of different variations on this that you could take to make it work better for you, or at least to get you in the process of starting to think about these things and break them down. So I think it's always important to make a list and to break it out, not just the things you have to do, but the things you have to do in different time periods and different importances. So make a list of the things that you think are the most important or the most time sensitive. Make a second list about what you feel like can wait a bit, and make a third list of things that you know can wait, until later in the year, the service year, or the month or day or whatever, or maybe things that aren't necessarily priorities. So you can break those out. Make sure in these to-do lists, if you have a daily to-do list, that you're building in break time as well. And you can also do this in whatever format works best for you. I do suggest writing these out physically because of the connection between like writing and memory. I think that's a really important thing. I think it stays with you better and it helps you to remember what you're supposed to be doing if you actually physically write things down. But if you want to keep a sticky note, if you want to keep a binder or a planner, if you want to do it online, if you want to do it verbally, if you just want to keep like a tape recorder like a doctor or something and listen to it later, find a format that works for you. But I think that's kind of the first step, is just to get kind of organized and break those things out. So the second step is to really increase your focus time. So now that you've broken out all of your tasks into what you can do today, what can wait, and what can wait even longer, it's important to really focus on those tasks. So stopping multitasking. A lot of times we just are trying to do too many things at once, and that's a cause of burnout. If you're just feeling super overwhelmed and you don't know what's going on, try to really focus on one activity at a time. So this kind of entails, sitting down, focusing on your project. Removing distractions is a big one, whether that's if you have to go into an office or you need to go to a library or you need to just get away from people or be in a space that you feel like you can work in. If you work better with people, if you work better by yourself, if you need to just log offline, disconnect from Wi-Fi or something. I know the internet is a really big distractor. I find myself on Facebook every time I'm trying to, write something important. So just realizing or being really realistic about what your distractions are and making sure that you can kind of step away from them. Breaking down your timeline into 20-minute segments. So this is one of those tasks that people talk about a lot. I think it's like 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 20 minutes on, 10, what is it, 20? I can't, yeah, 20 or 5, I can't remember what it is. Mm-hmm. But it's, really, really sitting down and focusing on that one exact task with no distractions for 20 minutes. And then taking a 5-minute break, and then doing it again for 20 minutes, and then taking a 10-minute break. this really does work. I know it sounds kind of weird, but if you get into the habit of doing it, it'll really help you kind of get things going and get motivated and complete those things. So definitely something to try. Using your schedule wisely, building in time to really think about your plan. So not just, winging something. So if you've got a webinar to do, not just doing it an hour beforehand or something, but really like thinking about what's going to be the most beneficial, giving yourself time to research, giving yourself time to outline. Outline is really important, breaking things down for events, for how you're going to strategize recruiting volunteers. Just giving yourself that time to really think deeper about it is important. And then if your day was just kind of weird, if you couldn't focus, maybe after work take some time and really focus on a project then in your personal life. If you spend all day thinking about, renewing your car insurance or something, maybe sit down after work and do that 20-10-minute thing and figure out a plan that works for you. This can be applied to all different, like I said, personal life things, and chronic stressors are just as big as reason as work things to feel burned out. So definitely. And then on to our third step. Empower your thinking. A lot of times burnout, it's just that mental place of staying in the mindset of this is too hard, this is too big, I don't know how to do it, I don't think it's going to be good enough, just that place of self-doubt. So really turning around your thinking and saying that you can do it, you're going to do it, you're going to start where you're at with what you have. So it might not be the best, it might not be full, it might not be all, but you're going to take that first step and you're going to start doing something, and you're going to be confident in what you have. So I think that's a hard thing. A lot of times we're really self-critical and we just want to we want our work to be the best, but your first draft is never, it's your first draft. It's never your final project. So just starting somewhere and knowing that you have a lot of people behind you that are going to support you is also really important. I would suggest making a list of everyone that you think can help with the project that you're working on, whether this is your host site or your partners that you work with, the VISTA team here. That's a great resource as well. Past presenters is also a really good thing. You guys have a lot of really amazing trainings at your fingertips here. And if there's somebody that you want to reach out to talk more about a specific subject, those are really, really good contacts to have. So knowing that you're not alone and knowing that you can do it and knowing that you can start somewhere are all really, really good tactics for empowering your thinking and moving forward out of that rut. And then our last and final step is getting seriously positive. Woo! I know this is really, really hard. A lot of us are, have those daily stressors and are stressed about projects and stuff like that, and just staying positive is really, really challenging, especially when, we have our VISTA here that feels like everything bad happens. And it's hard to feel positive when you feel like everything bad is happening. And I think it's just important to try to see a silver lining in things. So if something does go wrong or if something does happen, think about those lessons that you can learn from that. It doesn't negate the bad that happened. That's also okay. Those feelings don't have to be separate. You can feel bad and you can feel positive at the same time. But I think it is important to try to see the positive too. So when you're serving at your sites, it's a really good tactic to do is to make a list of things that you have accomplished. So at the end of the day, you have that to-do list. Instead of crossing things off, you can cross things off too. But just writing down all the things that you have gotten done that day, even if they're tiny little things like, did my timesheet or something like that. That doesn't take long. It's not mentally challenging necessarily, but you did it. It was something you can cross off your list, or talk to your boss. Like sometimes that can be really challenging, or your supervisor. So so don't sell yourself short, and definitely try to look for the things that are positive in your life. So, and then most importantly, I would just say that self-care is a really good way to deal with coping skills, or to deal with burnout. Take some time to do these things now, setting goals and expectations, budget management, whatnot, all of those different things that you can plan and they seem kind of stressful now, but doing those things now will help you from keeping to running into a bigger problem later. So if you sit down and you just take an hour or two to come up with kind of a rough budget. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but an outline, something to help you stay on task so that you don't get to the end of the month and realize that you don't have any money left and you're panicking and you don't want to go to work or you don't want to go to your service site because you're stressed out and you're feeling like you can't keep doing what you're doing because you can't pay your bills. So little things like that. Knowing what relaxes you and setting good boundaries is also important. So if you had a really bad day or something, if being around people is helpful, try to set something up. If you just want to be alone, making sure that you have that space to do that is also really important. Also, regular exercise and play is super important. Exercise and eating healthy makes a world of difference. I know it sounds corny and cheesy and sounds like everyone's parents, but it helps release dopamine and endorphins and just makes you feel more ready to tackle some of those projects. And it can also just be a really great stress release. Try kickboxing or something really active, and you'll feel great when you leave. And then the last point is just embracing your total self, your strengths and your vulnerabilities. There's a quote from a U of M football player from a couple of years ago that was dealing with some mental health problems and didn't want to talk about it and was just feeling lower and lower every day. And he said something when he finally decided to reach out and get help was that he said he realized there was strength in being vulnerable. And I think that's a really, really important kind of takeaway note is that we're all vulnerable, and addressing those things, it doesn't make you weak. It is really good to kind of sit back and say, this is where my faults are, this is where I can get better at, these are the things I can do to address that, and just being kind to yourself and taking care of yourself is really important. So if you guys have any tips for self-care or coping with that, please feel free to share in the comment section. And let me, share with the group. You guys are another resource for each other, which is really important. So I think we've got chatter.
Oh, you can keep going, Maura.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we just got a little chatter. I wanted to make sure that if somebody was trying to comment, they could. But that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully you found that helpful. Again, just, there are ways to deal with it. You're not alone. You're not helpless. Think about that 4-step process if you're feeling really discouraged at your service sites, and that can hopefully, following that can hopefully take away some of the stress and burnout that you're feeling and get you re-energized and motivated. Yeah, I think just take good care of yourself. Any questions? We'll leave the question box open here for a minute, and if you have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and we will get ready to transition to the next presenter. But thank you guys all for listening today, and I hope you have a great holiday season. Sorry, this is just taking an extra second, but we will hopefully have you guys up onto the next presenter shortly. I'm going to put everyone on mute, but if you have a question.
Eric, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect. Okay, well, so now we're going to go to the next slide.
So now we're going to dive into our poverty discussion with Eric Krieger. Eric Krieger was a VISTA from 2015 to 2016 at Detroit Edison Public School Academy. So you all should have listened to this podcast and that Eric suggested called Breaking News Consumers Handbook Poverty in America Edition, and it talks about the myths of poverty. So Eric, you can take it away.
Yes, I am just like finally sitting down to a computer. I'm trying to find the article, but I hope that thank you for the introduction. I hope that everyone was okay with like listening to the podcast and also enjoyed it. If I can actually I would love to hear a couple thoughts like before I talk about any of this. Does anyone have anything to say about it?
No one has anything to say right now, so I think that we can just dive into the content of it, and then we can spark conversation off of that, probably.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess I have my own personal experiences with a lot of this. I'm trying to convince people that like these, that policy reform or that allocating funds towards these kinds of things is a valid or important effort. And so like having this single handbook was like a really cool find for me. That I think actually like I personally would extend for a couple things. I'm trying very desperately to like get to the handbook really quickly. Give me 1 second. And our internet's down. Okay. Well, so the one rule that that kind of struck me that I think is very true but needs extending was the one about beware of unicorns, which is very true. Like a story that says, hey, look at how well this person did, and it was all through personal effort and personal, like individual. The story of the individual, I think, is a dangerous story, right? So I think the bigger thing that you could say about this is beware of all anecdotes, because I think that anecdotes allow you to put either blame or give credit to individual effort. And again, this is like very much like the capitalistic model where an individual can sort of lift themselves up by their bootstraps or not, based on their own want to, which is a very, very dangerous narrative. Yeah, does anyone have any I would like to hear some favorite rules or some moments that really struck you in there.
Okay, so we have Megan Lendman from Grand Rapids Public Schools that raised her hand. We also have a few other people that have raised their hands. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Megan first, and then I'm going to move on to Tyler Oxt, who's serving at the EUP ISD in Sault Ste. Marie. So Megan, go ahead.
Cool.
Hi, Eric. It's nice to hear from you again.
Good to see you or hear from you.
Yeah, this stuff really strikes me heavy because when it comes to documentation, I feel like people, we're always looking for the truth, but even facts can slay the truth if you're reporting facts from just one side. So I thank you for bringing this handbook to light because it really helps point people in the right direction. And there is, just thinking about what you were saying, number 8 says, be wary of reporting heavy on anecdotes and light on data.
Yeah.
So it kind of speaks to what you were just saying also. But I really like number 9, finding insight in stories in which people in poverty speak for themselves. because even, every report is going to be biased, but that's why I strive so hard to hear it from all sides before making decisions.
Yeah. And I remember about that rule. The lady, the woman who is actually a writer, she talked about trying to get a chair, and she was pregnant and kind of told her story. She had said about that specific rule that impoverished people are too busy fighting for their basic needs to advocate for themselves, which I think is a really very serious point that she made. Like they don't have time to go to protests. They're I think this whole narrative of poor people getting what they want from government and getting these handouts, that's not an easy thing to do, first of all. And second of all, they're not handouts. They have to work very hard for these things, and it's spend a hell of a lot of time. I mean, I guess I don't know if anyone in this webinar went through the process of food stamps or any government benefits for doing AmeriCorps, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of time, and especially if you have kids or if you have other responsibilities. I think that's a really serious point on this list.
Or if it's your second language.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Megan. We're going to move on to Tyler because he has his hand raised as well. So thank you for your input.
You are unmuted, Tyler.
Hi, Tyler.
So, two things. The first one is the point about individual stories drowning out the statistics or the actual reality of poverty. This is something that's a huge problem in all media reporting on issues, and I took a psychology of communications course, and it's called the exemplification theory by Dolph Zillman. And essentially writers build up these exemplars in their stories, because that's how journalists are taught to sell a story, is get that person on the ground point of view. Readers of those pieces remember that so much more than any compelling statistics. And so there's a whole body of psychological research on how our human ability to focus on the individual blurs the larger picture.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a cool point. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have had to work personally on not focusing so much on data in my life, because I'm a data nerd, and I bring that stuff to conversations, but oftentimes people need context, and I think that's probably why we focus on that.
Right, and then the second thing I wanted to bring up was the rule number 2 from their list, that the safety net is not as solid as portrayed. I really think that's one of the things that gets lost in a lot of these discussions about poverty and welfare systems, is what exactly composes the welfare system in the United States. And since 1996, it is not what I would characterize as a safety net so much as a process to get people back into the workforce. And there was a really interesting piece just this last week that I heard on NPR about how after the 1996 welfare reform, individual states chose to use their block grant funding for welfare programs, where now welfare dollars and our, quote, safety net is being applied to tuition for private colleges, or family planning or marriage counseling courses for anybody in a state. Lots of different things focused on some of the 4 areas the Personal Welfare and Responsibility Act was focused on. So really just even getting people to understand what the supposed net consists of is a real struggle.
Yeah, I think those are both good points. I was just going through some of the transcript here and looking at trying to find some of the numbers or some of the data that they brought up from it. One of them is the Census Bureau says that quarter of the people who are receiving benefits are kids, roughly 14% are elderly, 13% disabled, 9% engaged in caring for someone full-time, 8% are students, and 16% are already fully employed, and that's like 85%. So the other, whatever this made-up number of like everyone being dependent and sort of scamming the system is, this narrative that you hear a lot is this like it's just patently false. And I think it falls on those people to try and prove that it's false, and that's really unfortunate.
All right, thank you, Tyler. And I think we have, Megan, did you raise your hand again? It said that it went up, but I think it's down now. Oh, no, it's still up. Okay, so I'm going to unmute Megan. Oh, she's good? Okay, never mind, sorry. Okay, Eric, continue on.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I wanted to bring up a couple of those different numbers. Or like, I think the other one that struck me was the average person that's on welfare, is only receiving $1.82 per meal, I believe. Oh wait, no, $1.41 per meal, which I mean, like all you hear about, like, oh, they're going to Whole Foods and sort of living well. It's just so false. Like there's no way you can back that claim up. And I guess, like I said earlier, like you can break these things down as much as you want, but it unfortunately falls on the impoverished to disprove some of these things, and it shouldn't. It's just like they don't have the time to disprove people.
I liked how, okay, so one of the, what was brought up during the podcast, I'm just going to call it a podcast, I don't know what else to call it, but
yeah.
Was Vanetta, and how, like, up until, because she was convicted of armed robbery, but she, up until then, she, like, was playing by the rules, she was playing by the rules that the system has put in place, and was still, like, not making ends meet, and was still in poverty, and, like, that shows that people that are working full-time minimum wage are still living in poverty. Like, that's not an individual issue, that's a systemic issue, and that's what it talks about. But I just thought that it was really interesting because you hear about, like, impoverished areas, there's higher crime rates, but, like, people play by the rules and they can't move, they can't move out of being below the poverty line,
Yeah.
And then they have to support their families. So then they have to turn to other things out of desperation.
Minimum wage is a poverty wage.
Yeah.
That's like a saying that you hear often. And I saw a really cool graphic, which I wish I could provide for you right now, about like how as the poverty line has risen with inflation, the minimum wage has not risen to follow suit or to like keep people out of poverty. Like it used to be, if you were at a minimum wage, you could work your whole life 40 hours a week at a minimum wage and provide for your family and never be below the poverty line. And that's just not true anymore.
Yeah, they said during the podcast that during the 1960s you could raise a family of 3 on minimum wage, and now like and be above the poverty line, and now you can't.
Yeah, I mean, is there anyone who's like spurred to action through some of this? I mean, I suppose you guys are all doing things already, but is there anything that you are changing that you're doing that you heard that makes you want to change what you're doing? Take that as a no.
No, we didn't have anyone. Okay, so what Megan said was just taking time to make sure people don't fall through the cracks. That's what she said.
Yeah. I think for me, it's just another solidifier of like help give voice to the voiceless, help fight some of these things that they can't fight for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jonathan said, "What do you mean? What do you mean by changing what we are doing?" Can you clarify on that, Eric?
Like, is there any point here that made you change the way you think, or made you change the way you talk about these things to your friends, or when you try and convince people that these issues are important, do you bring any of these new points up? Yeah.
No, we don't have anyone. Oh, wait. Okay, Megan again. Megan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear. I guess it really just reinforces me again to encourage media literacy and encourage people to question what they hear and take the time to put it together rather than take it at face value.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, media literacy. I'm just staring back through this transcript of the episode.
So we have a Vista one of our Vistas, Shakita, she said, when dealing with the U.S. media on any subject, especially poverty, the sources should be verified. That's what she said.
Yeah, and that can be tough. That can be really tough because I think a lot of times they try and hide where things come from or where, like, their sources. That can be tough.
Yeah. The podcast also talks about medical expenses and how medical expenses can put people below the poverty line, and how if they do, and not even just medical expenses, but even taking time off to go to a doctor, people can lose their jobs over that. Yeah, and so do you want to talk about that at all? I thought that was just, that stuck out to me a lot. I wrote it down. And that it said, I think that 7 million people are affected by medical expenses, and that puts them below the poverty line. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also by far the most common, it's the most common way to become impoverished is to face a serious medical bill. Mm-hmm. I think like most people who have become impoverished started there and then couldn't get sort of back out of it. But also the other point is, 40% of people will live below the poverty line in their life, and that's like probably mostly because of medical bills or yeah. I think that's a really striking point. I can't really speak too much more on it. Like I don't. Mm-hmm. Other than what was in this episode, I don't have many like factoids for you. Mm-hmm. But I do think like it makes a strong case for universal health care, right? Like not having to face those things alone.
Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting, especially during our political climate right now, like where healthcare is going to be, and so I think that it's all connected. Your health, the amount of money that you were able to make, the cycle of poverty. Like, so yeah, I know that there's not a. I know that it's this was a good this podcast was a really good overview. But yeah, it was a brief overview on a bunch of different things. So I understand if there's like not a lot to go off of in terms of medical expenses and putting people below the poverty line. Something that also, go ahead.
This is the 5th episode in a series of 5.
Okay.
This is the culminating episode where they brought everything together. It was called the Poverty Tour. I don't know if you noticed that.
The Poverty Tour? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they had started in like the first 2 episodes were like in Appalachia and like exploring poverty in there, and then they were like sort of bringing these rules to light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that this was great for a poverty discussion, and I would also encourage our Vistas to watch the other 4 episodes too, called the Poverty Tour. We can send them along to you. So we have to wrap up here because we have to. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a few comments. Okay. Shakita says that I agree that while data is important, anecdote stories are also important and tell different stories. Thank you, Shakita. And Jonathan Rosewood, he's a new Vista. He actually just started in November. So he said, since serving as a Vista, I've been trying to meet people where they are and find resources for them. I've been paying more attention to why some people do not work. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for saying that. And then we have another comment from Salantia, who's at Reed Muskegon. She says, I think the cost of living has a large impact as well. Many people that I know have full-time employment and still live below the poverty line. Making minimum wage simply isn't enough to offset general poverty. Okay.
Yeah. All valid points.
Yes. And Shakita also said that I agree with number 3. I think she's talking about the handbook. I agree with number 3 and know firsthand, having worked at Michigan Works and now serving there. These kinds of programs are temporary short-term bandages that don't address the root cause of poverty. The third point in the handbook says scrutinize reform proposals that fixate on welfare to work programs. They are political seductions that don't address most of the poor.
Yeah. I really loved how that one was worded.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whose comment was that?
That was Shakita. Shakita, she is in Southeast Michigan. She's at Oakland University. So she, I did not know that Shakita worked at Michigan Works, though. I would like to talk to her more about that. Okay, so Eric, we actually have to wrap up. I don't know if you wanted to talk about a few of the solutions that they had talked about during that podcast, or I wrote some of them down, but I didn't know if you wanted to talk about a few of them.
I am never a fan of a person standing on a soapbox saying that this is how you fix poverty, because I think that we've heard that so many times, and it just doesn't. It's not. It's very like short-sighted, or I think that like these rules or these generalizations can help you say like this is not how poverty works. Like when you hear an anecdote or a story about poverty, you can say this is just false, it's patently false. But I think to say like to give rules to fix it, I just don't. I've never been a fan of. I think it's a very holistic thing. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. I think it will also take a lot of like policymakers and organizers and a lot of people carrying a whole awful lot.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, so any closing comments from Vistas or Eric before we hang up and then do housekeeping? Anything else from anyone?
You're muted, Tyler.
Thanks. Real quick, Eric, they mentioned you were a former Vista, but what do you do now?
I am a contractor. I'm a builder, so I build houses around Detroit, and then I also work at Moose Jaw.
All righty.
Any other questions or comments for Tyler or for Jake and I? And Eric. Okay. All right, if there's no one else, thanks so much for discussing about this podcast with us today, Eric. I could have worded that better. Yeah. But anyways,
thanks for having me.
Thanks for getting on here so last minute. I appreciate it.
No.
Alrighty, so we're going to transition. Eric, I think you can hang up now, but I really appreciate you introducing this to us, because now I really want to watch the other 4, and I hope the other Vistas feel the same way. Educating ourselves is extremely important. So Yeah. So anyways, thanks, Eric. We're going to get on to housekeeping now. All right. Bye.
Have a great year, everyone.
Yep. Bye. Okay. So a few housekeeping. Yeah. Okay. Reminders about your holiday timesheets. Okay. So if your host site is closed for more than 10 days, you are expected to fill out a time off request form. It's on the Weebly website in the paperwork section. If you have any questions about that or can't find it, let your Vista leader, Jake, or I know, and we can send the document along to you. And let us know where you'll be working during that period, whether it's at a library or a coffee shop or wherever, okay? All right. Vistas are in service to their communities 24/7, 365. Unless you are using your personal time during the holidays, you are still expected to serve in your normal capacity. This is a great time to work on your Vista, your initiative, and planning future programs and projects. This is also a good opportunity. This is also a perfect opportunity to start putting together your legacy binder if you've not done so already. I'll talk more about that in a second, though. Either way, let us know in advance which dates you're going to be taking off. In your timesheets, put down what days your host site is taking off for break, things like that. So just give us a heads up. Okay, so Legacy Binder guidelines. I found a one-pager of how to put together a Legacy Binder, what its content should be. I will be sending that out, and I will also give it to Jake so he can send it out to his Vistas. And you can follow the one-pager. If you're confused about the Legacy Binder, if you're kind of up in the air on what's expected, this should clear that up. But if we do send it along and you do have more questions, Jake and I would be more than happy to talk to you about a Legacy Binder. December 31st, make sure that your timesheets, your monthly reports, and expense reports are turned into your Vista leader. Just a reminder, I know you guys do it every month, but it's going to be, it's holiday time, so it's going to be a weird time. Just make sure to have them in December 31st. If you're on vacation, that's fine. Just maybe, you know, set a time and dated email that can send out in the future. Or just figure out a way to get that to us. All right. If there's no more, oh, what are expense reports? Those are for league members, Jonathan. I don't think that that applies to you. League members fill out expense reports. Okay, so if there's no questions, if everyone is good, then we're going to let you go. And happy holidays. Happy holidays from your Vista team. You love it. We appreciate everything that you're doing and everything that you're doing to improve Michigan communities. We appreciate you guys. So happy holidays and have a good holiday season.
See you all later.
Oh, we're going to stay on if anyone has questions for a few minutes, but if you are all good to go, you can hang up.